Hi, Aaron. It's so nice to have you on the show. How is it going, man?
It's going well. I'm really thankful to be on this show. As I just mentioned off camera before we started, I said, I saw the theme of the podcast, the spiritual leadership, and just helping
So
people be their best selves. And I was really excited to jump in.
beautiful. And just like I mentioned earlier, thank you so very much for being here. And you see, oftentimes, Aaron, I love to thank my guest for two things. So, firstly, I want to thank you for investing in yourself. You see, Aaron, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes, I
Absolutely.
love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, Aaron, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes and the leaves weren't green, they were all dry. I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Aaron, just recently, I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the tree. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and instantly I got the urge to move closer to have a good look, of which when I did, it wowed me. You see, the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes now, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. And you see, not just mangoes, but ripe mangoes. It was a beautiful moment that day. I was excited as though someone gave me thousands and thousands of dollars. I was so happy. Now, my point is the fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing person that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you see you got the request from me to be on the show. Because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing. It's amazing. And I can't just take my eyes off it. And that's why I said, I've got to have this great man on the show that myself and the audience may benefit from the fruit of all that you're doing. So thank you so very much for investing in yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if Aaron had said nope, there was nothing I could do about it. Thank you very much, man. Truly appreciate it. Beautiful.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
let's get
so go
started.
ahead and ask me. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm quite excited to have you on the show today, Aaron, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Aaron, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. Not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance. I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Aaron on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Aaron, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, powerful, and important information, of which I'm totally convinced, Aaron, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. You know, we are just so curious right now. We want to know how Aaron got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some really beautiful questions for you. Okay, Aaron, over to you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so a couple things you need to know about me to reach my current professional situation. I currently am an executive coach, leadership consultant, and part owner of integrated leadership systems. So I apply cognitive behavioral psychology in a coaching framework. So I coach, I consult, and then I do training based on transforming businesses to focus on the heart, basically. But in order to know how I got there, The main things you need to know about me is, first, I was homeschooled. So I had a very structured, very strict upbringing in which we had I like to say the Asian grading system, right? Because my mother is Filipino. And so we had A, B, or F. So that was our grading system. So anything less than 80% was considered a failure. And so I became quite a perfectionist. We talk about that mango tree example you gave. I was not bearing fruit at that time, or the fruit that I was not who I am now. I was chasing a lot of assurances, certainties, impressiveness, scholastic achievement. And while this is the society that we're built on, over time it started to feel a large dissonance with who I was. And so while I was still being a mango tree, I was not being that flourishing one that I could have been. And so I got my degree in industrial organizational psychology, which is essentially fancy business psychology, not to oversimplify it, but to simplify it for those listening. And I actually set out to be a statistician. So I was going to do people metrics. So I was going to turn things that couldn't be numbers, such as employee motivation or engagement, something like that. And I was going to turn that into numbers. And that came from that purpose of seeking certainty. It came from that sense of being a rigid thinker, et cetera, and chasing after that certainty instead of playing in the abstraction of what being a human being is, which is also what appealed to me about your podcast here. The second thing you need to know about me is that I am diagnosed autistic, which I had not known until about a year and a half ago. I believe 2023 in April. So actually almost 2 years at this point, in which I finally got this sense of self-acceptance, because I had always thought before that I was othered and different. And, now I do know factually that I am othered and different, but now it's a strength rather than a fear of isolation or a perceived weakness. It is a strength because I say, yes, the world as a whole is pretty messed up. They do not chase after the heart. They look at those numbers and that certainty and that I'm right, you're wrong. And it's not how the world should be. It's, hey, you and I both have differing opinions and differing views and different experiences. And if we can get to where I see the whole person and you see the whole person, and we accept that we are two completely different but equally whole people, then we create beautiful things together. So as far as my journey, that was really the big shift. I still am an analytical, statistical, mathematical guy, but I focus on seeing the whole person. And every time I sit with my clients, the first thing I want to set as an expectation is, when you spend time around me, and this includes you also, Elisha, if you spend time around me, I want you to feel heard, and I want to give you something that makes you feel empowered. And that's it.
And those are some of the things that makes up a great leader. Being attentive and wanting to empower people. That's a brilliant one. I got that.
Absolutely.
And oh man, you've come a long way. You've got a beautiful journey and a very interesting one, and inspiring at the same time. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, let us talk about authenticity for a moment. For someone who wants to know how to embrace authenticity, what are some tips or insight or whatever it is that you can share about that?
So when it comes to chasing authenticity, one of the number one things that I struggled with is I thought being authentic meant being my whole self all the time. So for instance, I work in a lot of corporate adjacent settings. I talk to a lot of situations like this where it's one-on-one, right? And I want to make time to listen to your thoughts and let you ask me questions. I could sit here and talk for a straight hour, but it would not be the part of me that is appropriate in this situation, because the best way for us to use our time together is to equally spend it learning and growing each other. So I use the example, I go out and I do speeches a lot. So that is a space where I talk for about an hour. Well, it's also in corporate situations. So I'm in, business clothing, I'm in a dress shirt, etc. Well, I also really love the Renaissance Fair. And actually, I don't know if we have this camera set up. Sorry for those who are on audio only, but I'll actually turn my camera and you can see a mannequin in the background with some some Renaissance garb. So I have some armor there and some little crafted pieces that I made. And so I'll use that example of a part of me loves the Renaissance Fair, but I'm not going to go into a speech or go to train a corporation and put on a full suit of armor. It's simply not the time for that. So I'm at many times misunderstood through my journey that I tried to be my whole self, my whole authentic self. And so there were jokes I cracked in serious situations, or I was overtly serious in situations with friends where we were just goofing off together. And so kind of missing the mark on that nuance. And it would be very easy to blame that on a piece of my autism, but no, it's simply life. It's growth, learning myself and how I want to show up in different spaces. So let me cap all that off with the thought of I misunderstood and thought I had to be my whole self all the time. Instead, the biggest piece of authenticity is crafting a life that honors your whole self. So if you have 3 values, for instance, of fitness, family, and fun, well, there's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Plan a day where you make sure you have a fitness goal and you hit the gym, and then have a day where you spend time with your family really intentionally. And then maybe Friday or Saturday night, you go out with friends. So there's where you're crafting a full 3 days where you reach all those values. But if you try to do all 3 in one day, hit the gym, be with your family, and go see your friends, it becomes a busy day and it could burn you out. And so that's the main piece of advice I would give for anybody striving towards their authenticity. The second and simpler piece for the very first step, right, is be quiet more. Not be at home reading or watching something or being on your phone. Be intentionally bored. Make time to sit with yourself in silence. That will tell you a lot about who you are because there'll be no distractions. That's when that quiet voice inside of you will say, I want to do this. And that's going to help you move towards your authentic self.
Amazing. I just learned some amazing stuff from you. That's a beautiful one. Thank you for sharing that, man. Okay, we have 2 more questions to go. Let us talk about emotional intelligence and how does it help in leadership? I feel this is very important.
Absolutely. Emotional intelligence has actually become very popular in the sense of what leaders are striving towards, because we used to have, well, we still do in many places, a hierarchical, almost militant style of businesses where the boss is on top and it's what I say goes, and then it goes down and down. And so people are striving for promotions just so they have more power. And of course, again, for the sake of time, it's an oversimplification. All these are very nuanced and complex. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll use simple examples and versions. So emotional intelligence is necessary in order for us to move towards a more collaborative, more servant-oriented leadership, like a servant leader or compassionate leadership or whatever you want to call it. Some call it transformational leadership, but it's that feeling of empowering others. When you are a leader that is striving towards empowering others, you are not thinking of a hierarchical setting. You are thinking of almost rather than thinking about like depth in the sense of like water, you're thinking of breadth in the sense of how widely and on the same plane your influence is reaching. So rather than a laser light going up or down, it becomes this bathing of light, almost a cone or a spotlight or something like that, where it's washing over a large group of individuals. So when you're a member of a team and you are a servant leader or a transformational leader, or you're leading with emotional intelligence, there's that aspect of seeing the whole person again. There's that idea of, because I have emotional intelligence, Aaron, I can say, hey, I am a Filipino man and I'm very sensitive and I believe in this and this and this. And I spend my time doing Renaissance Fair and I'm also very serious. And I also love podcasts and I like my voice or whatever, right? And then I look at you, Elisha, and say, okay, your race and background and style, and you love the spirituality, you have your podcast, etc. So we are now able to connect first off on the podcast, but also if you and I just sat and had a conversation, I can see visually that you are a Black male, or at least that is how you are presenting. I don't want to assume pronouns or anything. And so I can say, you know what? What is your experience being ethnic? What is my experience being ethnic? Now we've created another vein of connection because I'm emotionally intelligent enough to say, hey, I see more than just the one thing we're connecting on. Because if we just talked about spirituality and the podcasting, that's all fine and good. But then are we going to deepen the relationship or not? So that's where the emotional intelligence comes of, I know myself, I'm noticing things in you, and we have the tools to mutually grow the relationship. And then, of course, having that piece of authenticity on top of it, of I want to empower you and be a servant leader.
Amazing. Now I see why you're good at what you do. And I love the part where you mentioned servant leader. That's a great word. And I got that. So, the final question: how do you help businesses grow and improve?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I will not work with a business where I'm not working with the CEO. I might work with individuals if you are a manager or a director or even just a person that wants personal coaching. I will work with you. Way it works is that cognitive behavioral psychology, that thought. I don't have the time today to explain it in depth, but there are other podcasts, or you can always book a chat with me. I'm always happy to connect with anybody and just talk with them. But I will see your whole self and I will leave you feeling heard and empowered. So I start with the CEO. And if there is a business that, let's say, a common business is, oh, we're all a family here, which is fantastic, right? It's a great goal. However, a lot of times we are so much like a family and we love each other so much and we like each other that we don't want to not be liked. And so businesses like that tend to not have a lot of accountability. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Because of that, there are a lack of structure and a lot of productivity is lost. And there is always hidden resentment because there's favoritism or, hey, I wish so-and-so would speak up, or there has to be a balance. And so any strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. So this is not to say or speak ill of family businesses, right? Where, hey, we're a family, we all like each other. That's a great thing to strive for. Also understand that there does have to be a strong arm of who is making the decision, who is actually making the final thought. So to take that example, let's say I'm transforming this business. I would work first off with the CEO. And any problem in your business, for any business owners, any problem in your business is your problem. You are responsible. If you are the person owning the business, you are responsible. So I will sit with them and I say, you know what, you're a really likable guy. I'm scared that you don't have a backbone, or something similar, of course, depending on how we communicate. I won't just come out and just have a blunt assessment. Like I said, oversimplifying things for the sake of this podcast timeline. But let's say, okay, this is a person that is afraid to not be liked. He really wants to be liked. I say, okay, let's work on that. So I want you to start setting boundaries, start stating your needs and not asking. Don't qualify. A lot of times there are people who say, let's say you're standing on my foot and I say, hey, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm just over here. I'm just having a fun time just like you. But, your foot's on my foot and it would be really nice. Well, just say, hey, your foot is on my foot. Could you step off? Thank you. That's it. Hey, your foot is on my foot. Could you step off? Thank you. But what if they think that's too mean? Well, that's not your responsibility. You have stated your needs clearly, concisely. You've given no room for, misunderstanding. It's, hey, your foot is on my foot. I'd like it off. Please. Thank you. That's it. That is a healthy boundary. So I would work with that CEO who's probably doing things like qualifying. And so they're not really leading. They are just kind of asking really nicely and hoping things fall into place. So I would say, okay, that's something that we need to work on. So I'd work with the CEO. Then I would work with the executive team after about 6 months coaching the CEO. I'd work with the executive team all individually and as a team for about another 6 to 9 months. And then finally, depending on the size of the business, we would coach the staff and do a 9-month training program. All of this focused on the heart, all of this focused on making sure people feel heard and empowered. And that empowerment looks different for each person. Some people that are scared to not be liked will want to set boundaries and will have struggles with that. They will have to be building a backbone, or they will be people pleasers, and that's what we'll work on. Others need to learn how to listen more, need to shift their perspective, need to start to understand and start to see the whole people around them. And others have to start stating, hey, I'm a whole person and here's who I am. So depending on your needs, I would adjust, but ultimately I will go in to the CEO, the executive team, the upper level management, 20 people at a time. I will transform your business over 1 to 5 years, making sure that everybody feels heard and empowered to speak up.
Beautiful. And that's really a great solution, because many people have become something else due to that problem. So having folks like you who are solving it, it's a lot. Thank you for all that you're doing, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So to bring this to an end, Aaron, for folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed so far, or even ask questions, how can that be possible?
Absolutely. You would contact me on LinkedIn, which I believe I gave you the links. If not, I can get those right after this recording. But you can find me on my LinkedIn. It is Aaron Helton. You'll see my face. Should be the same headshot that's on this podcast. If not, I feel like I look pretty similar between photos. So find me, a leadership consultant. Send me a message. Do not be afraid to message me and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. Can we chat? I am always open to connect. I'm always excited to meet new people. I'm always excited to help you feel heard and empowered. Finally, you can see our website at integratedleader.com if you want to see more about the specifics of our business, or if you want to work with a coach that just has a different profile than I do. If you want to work with a woman in there, a middle-aged woman, or if you want to work with an older gentleman, or you could work with me directly. Let's talk.
Beautiful, and that's a great one. Thank you for all that you're doing. So that's going to be the end of the show. Aaron, thank you for coming, and thank you for blessing us with these amazing stuffs, man. It means a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And you have a fantastic day, everybody listening.